Hello, everyone. My name is Joey Snider. I'm here with Casey Mann. We filmed a casual round at Harvest Field Disc Golf Course in State College, and we want to take you through the course and some of the shots we threw. All right, so the first hole is a long par 4 with not much to worry about other than the OB on the right, which is the marked by the road. This is my first shot. This is my first shot. I'm throwing a pretty flippy destroyer. I threw it a little too high, but I ended up getting some pretty good distance.
The pawns on the right always make me think twice about the shot. I usually play it pretty safe. Throw it, just kind of lay up like halfway up the fairway.
We play this course a lot, so we're pretty familiar with it and what kind of shots you want to throw on each hole. So we can let you guys know what shots we like to throw on each hole.
The wind on this hole also is almost always going downwind, usually a bit downwind to the right. So you really don't have to worry about too much going OB right, because usually the wind will take it back in bounds. Right there, I kind of pulled my shot and the wind took it over too far to the left.
Here's my approach. You'll see me throw this disc a lot. It's my BT medium harp. Love this for approaches. Wasn't the best approach, but I think I'm within about 15 or 20 feet. Nice up by Casey. This is our first time being filmed, so you'll see me probably look back at the camera 100 times.
Joey bangs in the birdie, early lead.
Yep. This is my favorite hole on the course, hole 2. It kind of, you shoot over a little bit of a valley and then it goes up like a steep switchback trail. So your first shot, you're trying to throw into the hill and just throw it as straight as you possibly can. You don't really want to contend with the left or right side.
You absolutely crushed that drive, made it most of the way up the hill, so you have a really easy approach. And I did pretty much the exact opposite, threw it right in the bushes.
Yep, that's the grip lock mistake.
I had trouble getting this one down.
You actually had a nice little window, if I remember.
Yeah, I did.
Still pretty awkward.
Ignoring the 2-meter rule, I had a pretty decent out, actually.
You can kind of see here how steep this hill is. It's a pretty steep grade. There's a lot. If you hit the trees going up the hill, you can roll away pretty easily. I hit one of the last trees on the approach, so didn't end up getting super close, but I should be around circle's edge.
Yeah, you got a really unfortunate kick. I kind of messed up my approach and then had a 30, 35-foot putt. So.
Yep, first big putt of the day wasn't a good one. It wasn't a good putting day for either of us, I don't believe.
Yeah, that's pretty true. I take a bogey, you take a par, on to the next. This is honestly one of my least favorite holes in the course because it's long uphill and always incredibly upwind. So it's just a very long uphill par 4. There's some guardian trees by the basket that make it really difficult to get a birdie, even with a good approach. And yeah, the first drive, you really just want to crank as far as you can. And Joey had a nice one up there that kept pretty low and had a good angle on it.
The conditions weren't too windy today, so it's pretty nice.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I think we landed about 30 feet apart from each other, maybe 40.
This approach can be pretty tricky with the trees. You kind of want to keep it low. There's also OB both long and to the left as the road kind of wraps around if you have a pretty errant approach. I just kind of sawed it off a little bit. I'll be about 25 or 30 feet away, putting downhill.
Yeah, I remember I actually tried to give that putt a run because I was putting into the hill and just still pretty much laid it up. But
That putt felt pretty good out of my hand, but it was just an inch too high.
kind of a theme for a lot of the day, actually.
This is a pretty straightforward hole, probably like a putter or mid-range shot. You just really don't want to throw it too far right because there's some nasty rough over there. I just kind of threw this a little too high and ended up going off to the left side near that bush.
Yeah, I'm throwing my bounty here. I just try to keep a pretty straight shot, pretty low, and what I threw is pretty typical. Usually ends up a little bit left by that little dirt hill, and then you have an outside run, or you could just easily lay it up for a par.
I'm kind of inside the bush a little bit, have some branches to contend with, but I wanted to give this one a nice run for the camera.
And it was
Once again, I was just off. Felt pretty good out of my hand again. It's just I need to dial it in a little bit more. We'll just tap out for our threes. With the elevated basket, we get a lot of threes on this hole.
Yeah, I'm glad they have it there, because if it wasn't elevated, it would be a very easy par 3.
Now we kind of get into the woods a little bit. This course can get very wooded in the middle of it. It's open at the beginning and open at the end, but the middles, there's a lot of tight wood shots. This is kind of a slight left to right bend. Forehands usually work, or a turnover backhand. It was my first forehand off the tee, and I kind of just threw it a little too high and right. Went off into the right woods.
Really looked like it slipped out of your hand there.
Wasn't my best effort.
Oh, and I just
made the other mistake.
I went right in the tree.
Tends to be a lot cleaner if you hit on the left side. It's not as dense over there, and you can have an angle at the pin.
Very true. I had a pretty easy shot.
I don't have much here. I'm kind of trying to do something a little sneaky and slide it up with a little bit of bend.
Yeah, I mean, that was really good from where you were. You got a huge skip out of the disc, and it really curled towards the basket.
Yeah. Nice putt. Just off again. The scores can add up quickly once you get into the wooded section of the course. However, this is probably the easiest hole to birdie in the whole course. You kind of just want to throw a nice soft hyzer shot through the gap and then end up, and you'll have like a 150-foot approach towards the pin. But I had an errant tee shot.
Yeah, that disc just slipped out of my hand, went, I mean, way off to the left, but I still had a pretty decent shot from there, and Joey cooked it right up the middle for a perfect approach.
Yeah, that's exactly what I try to do. Not trying to bite off too much, but I should have a pretty straight, easy approach shot from there.
Yeah, like I said, still a pretty open approach from where I was. Even gave myself a look at birdie from maybe 20, 25 feet.
I gave this one a little bit of a run. I thought it was going in most of the way. Ended up just going over, but I'll left myself quite a 20-foot comebacker. Some low branches, kind of had to get onto a knee.
That's a tough bounce for sure.
You added a sound effect. That's awful.
That was a really unlucky spit out.
Yeah, hurts because after that tee shot, you're really expecting to get the birdie. Almost kind of dunked it in for the eagle and took the bogey. So that's a tough one, but
yeah, I mean it was unlucky. That sort of putt goes in most of the time.
This is a fun hole. It's very forehand friendly. Bends almost 90 degrees once you get through the gap. Can get really ugly if you get into either side of the woods. I leaked it a little bit early, but it kicked to the center, so I actually had a pretty nice shot.
And this shot actually hit the ground about 20 feet in front of me, and then just the rest of its flight was just a skip.
Both of us made it out the gap, so that's exactly what you're kind of looking for. As long as you get to here, this is really a bonus birdie. You're not getting this hole too often unless you get lucky and throw a perfect shot. There's a lot of trees to contend with near the basket. really thinking about this putt after the last green, the last couple greens, I guess. But
Yeah,
we tap out.
we're certainly happy with 2 pars in that hole. We've only seen birdie there a couple times. I really like
This hole's
this hole.
kind of, you got it.
I really like this hole. It's downhill and a pretty sharp left turn, very technical. There's really like one wide open line and then a narrower inside gap that Joey just hit pretty perfectly, actually. But
Yeah,
it's
I always
pretty
go
funny.
for the wider gap, and if I throw it a little inside, you sometimes get lucky with the thinner gap. Casey also threw a pretty good line. I think he caught a tree at the end, but we both got through the initial gap, which is sometimes a little bit tough.
Yeah, it's definitely an important part. If you can get down even halfway, you'll have a pretty open shot. And I just threw a little far in that one. Kind of got away from me.
This green's pretty tricky because it slopes downhill the entire way. You will very rarely see someone well where I am. I'm on the next fairway, actually well past the hole. So usually you hit something before you get to there. But I gave it a run. I think I clipped a tree. Once again, pretty happy with par.
This is definitely one of the easier holes in the course. Pretty short par 3. They're actually getting rid of it soon to add in a different hole. But there's both a forehand and backhand line. Forehand is definitely more manageable for birdie. As you can see, you get this up there. You usually get a little skip, slightly raised basket, and yeah, pretty straightforward.
The line's a little tricky. It's kind of a forehand line is the most open one, but as long as you hit the gap, you can usually get it all the way to the pin. You kind of have to control the speed a little bit, but both of us did really well with that. So this is definitely a hole that we like to attack and we like to birdie. There's our star frame.
Pretty psyched.
You're pretty happy about that. I wonder how commentary, you know exactly who's talking.
Yeah, I think they have more experience. This is Joey's least favorite hole in the course, with good reason. It's a brutal par 3.
Slight uphill, pretty long shot. You have to keep it straight the whole way, and the gap only gets narrower as you go further. I like this hole. It's just very tough, and you see me pull it pretty early, and gonna be really tricky from there. I kind of have like throw a little flick from reach step out, and just threw it too high. It faded out on me. And this hole is another hole you can really rack up some big numbers. I'm trying to throw this in because I'm a little frustrated. Put a pretty decent attempt at it, but hit off the top of the basket and skipped pretty far.
Yeah, it was really unlucky for sure.
You see Casey landed in a pretty good landing zone. If you end up a little too left, you usually have an open look. And just really in my head on the putting, I guess, just a little bit too high and got a comebacker of about the same distance. You can see how these holes can start piling up the score, and I'm really struggling on the green right now.
That was tough to watch for sure.
Finally cashed it in, I think, for a 6, but that's what can happen on this hole.
Yeah, especially if you get over to the right. This is kind of similar to the downhill par 3 earlier. It hooks to the left, and there's 2 lines, and the one on the right is definitely easier to hit. But if you can hit the inner line on the left, which Joey does right here, you can get really far up the fairway.
Yeah, I was feeling frustrated from the last shot, kind of put a little bit more into it than I normally did, and kind of got lucky through the whole way through the gap, and I'll have a pretty decent approach from there.
Yeah, it's a pretty birdieable par 4 as long as you can get, 2/3 way up the fairway. I just absolutely shanked that.
Those trees that are about 75 feet away from the tee, they're deceptively close together. If you try to bite off too much of the fairway, you can hit them pretty easily, and then you're in big trouble.
Kind of figure out
this is where my drive ended up. This is where my drive'd end up, which is where I'd place my disc if I could every time. It's really easy and just a nice forehand approach. You can just kind of throw a soft shot through the gap. Probably put myself 10 feet away.
Yeah, it was an absolutely monstrous drive.
Yeah, that's how the putting's been going today. Something I've definitely been working on, but showing a lot of rust right here. So
Wasn't a super exciting hole for either of us.
It's been a pretty theme for me to have on the par fours to have a good birdie look and end up taking par, which is something I want to capitalize on. This was a pretty bad shot as well. Just leaked it way off to the right, and I'm going to be in trouble. This hole gets pretty bad pretty quickly.
Yeah, it used to be the easiest hole on the course, actually. And then they moved the tee back about 100 feet. So this initial gap becomes a lot harder to hit, and the distance comes into play more as well. So you either need a turnover backhand or a nice forehand to get there. I went a little bit too far to the left in the woods.
These trees can really feel like jail. It's like I have no angle. I'm trying to throw a high putter shot, just turn over, and hit a tree not too far in front of me, and just ended up on the other side of the woods. And I'm probably in a worse spot than I was. It's really nothing other than throwing straight out back into the fairway.
Yeah, a lot of times when you get back into the trees, there's really no option except to throw a vertical roller, and then
ended up back on the right side, but had a bit more of an angle. Had to throw a little bit big flex shot with my flare, which is my most stable disc, to give myself a putt.
Yeah, definitely not a good putting day for either of us.
Yeah. We're close on most of them, but just not quite executing as well as we could be.
Yeah, but a solid
feels good to make
right
that one, but still a big number on that hole, which is a little frustrating after putting up a big number a couple holes ago.
This is probably the easiest hole in the course now. Also temporary and going to be removed soon. It's just a short, slightly downhill shot in just a wooded area. If you hit one of the gaps between the trees, you got a good chance of sliding down the other basket and getting a birdie.
Yeah, you really can keep it low. It slides quite a bit. This is a pretty fantastic shot by Casey to get all the way down there to give himself a look. I clipped a tree pretty early, but it's still not too bad to approach. I wanted to give this one a nice run, and it was a good line until it hit the last tree.
I'm pretty sure it would have gone in if it hadn't hit that tree. Another missed putt.
Just off on the birdie. This is a super fun shot. It's downhill the whole way. You have to hit a small gap with a low ceiling, and you want it to hook left just at the end. It's a really tricky shot, but it feels super good when you hit it. And Casey's going to show you a pretty fantastic tee shot here.
Yeah, I just pushed the right side of the fairway with a pretty stable mid-range and had it just fade down left towards the hole. Probably got a pretty decent skip, and you'll see where I ended up in a minute.
So yeah, you can see I don't know what I was doing there. I think I'm in my head a little bit, but I just kind of threw it right into the ground. But these woods can be pretty tricky to find an angle.
Yeah, I was really confused about what you were going for on that first try.
Yeah, I think I wanted to give it some height and let it kind of like flex out a little bit, and I just threw it straight to the ground. Maybe a little frustration in that one. Should have been thinking a little bit harder. And I left myself with a pretty long uphill putt.
And you broke the next tee arrow.
Yeah, I felt bad about that.
We'll put it back on top.
And you will rarely see a birdie on that hole, so it's pretty impressive from Casey.
This was a new line for you with the forehand on this hole. Worked out pretty decently.
I kind of really liked it on my hand. I just hit the last tree I had to miss, and I think I could have got it down there, but trying something a little new. This shot's pretty finicky because it's downhill the whole way. You got to keep it straight, and there's not many clear lines to go for.
Yeah, the key at least for par is to get it down to that bunch of like 4 or 5 trees. Then you should have a pretty easy look. And I just pulled my drive, not a great approach, and I was about 20 feet away.
Pretty touchy shot here just because the green's pretty fast and slopes downhill. So I'm throwing like a less stable putter shot just so I can kind of try to land it flat. It's a good try by Casey.
Yeah, glance the left chains. You put it in for par. I collect
You can see me really thinking about my putts at this point in the rounds.
Newest hole in the course.
It's a fun shot. You just kind of you want to throw a straight shot through the gap and have it hook right at the end. You can do it with the turn of a backhand or a forehand, but you really just want to hit that gap that's probably about 150 feet away, right in the middle of the fairway.
And that was just I don't know what happened there. My shot was pretty high in the tree. Actually, that was a shot I took out of frustration. My drive landed pretty off the fairway to the left. It was a bit of a tough out from there.
Yeah, I think if you get to the gap, then you usually have a pretty good chance at par. But Casey unfortunately leaked really early, but this was actually a really good shot. I was impressed. It's tough to get out of that.
Yeah, gave myself a chance at par. It was annoying with all the thorns back there.
I remember thinking about that shot for a while. I ended up just throwing like a kind of like a putt. Kind of a tricky angle from where I was.
Yeah, this hole is pretty tough. We haven't seen many birdies here. But very solid putt for the par.
This hole is a big distance hole. It's uphill, like very uphill the entire way. Start over the water a little bit. I was really happy with this drive. Kind of crushed it. Usually the marker for a good drive for myself is if I get to that where that bridge is or where that road is, and that's right where I was. So I was happy.
Yeah, Joey was just above the road, and I mean, that's like a typical drive, and for reference, I'm maybe halfway to it up the hill. So
it just makes it a little easier to get into the woods. However, the woods on this hole is just quite tricky because there's not a lot of clear lines. You kind of just want to throw it at the woods and hope you get a little bit lucky.
Yeah, if your second shot can sneak past any of the trees, that's a huge advantage to be able to get up to the pin for a birdie. Because it's pretty hard to get all the way up there when you're shooting from outside.
You can just see how dense it is there. Casey threw a great shot, but it's very dense. All the gaps you're looking at are going to be like 4 or 5 feet at most. I'm trying to throw like a little flex forehand, and it just didn't give it time to flex out. I ended up rolling into the woods. Just shows how tricky that shot can be.
Then you were putting from a thorn bush. You still almost made it.
Yeah. Try to give it a run. Try to save the birdie, but I ended up hitting a tree behind, and I'll be tapping in the par. Casey got himself a nice little birdie.
I was pretty stoked. I've only birdied that hole once or twice. Anyway, another huge distance hole coming up. Very downhill, wide open. It's basically a driving range. And
this is the signature hole of the course, I'd say. You want to crush something, and you just have so much space. Basically, as far as you get it just makes your approach a lot easier. But I was happy with that one. I kind of got over on it, and it flexed back at the end.
And I pulled my drive a little bit to the right, got it to the other side of the trees, which I kind of like because then you can have a nice backhand approach. A lot of hyzer back towards the tree line. I threw this a little shorter than I'd like, but it was still between the last tree and the second to last one, which is about 50 feet away from the basket.
You see, like I got down pretty far, so I'll have a forehand harp shot, which I like, and I just kind of tried to put a little too much on it and kept it too straight, and there's actually a downslope behind the pin. I ended up down behind the pin, so I'll be looking back up at the pin.
Which is kind of an advantage because you can run any putts and not be afraid of a roll away.
Yeah, which is what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to finish the round out with a nice birdie, trying a little jumper, and
This is a good run.
gave it a good try, and stuck close, which is what I wanted. This will be Casey for his par.
I was a little nervous about that with the hill behind it and the wind was gusting a little bit. It's a scary putt.
It's a clean putt, and I'm tapping out to finish our round.
Nice par for him to finish. Nothing to complain about there.
Wasn't the best scoring round for myself. Casey did all right. I had some rough holes, but overall it was a super fun match, and glad we could get it filmed and show off the course.
Yeah, fun round for sure. Putting was definitely an issue on the day, but at the end of the day, we had some really cool shots. Joe, some really cool runs.
Thanks for tuning in.